What's up, guys? This is the Extra Points podcast with the College Football Experience. We are the College Football Experience, and we got a special guest here today. We got my friend, Brannon Smith, the resident Georgia fan of the College Football Pick'ems group. Brannon, glad to have you on today to talk some Georgia Bulldogs football. I know you love your dogs, man. I know you love them. Excited to have you on. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Excited to be here. We didn't finish the way I hoped last year, but excited to talk about the upcoming team recruiting class. So excited to be on and share a little bit more about the program for those that don't follow it as closely as I do.
I mean, with us growing up in the state of Georgia, it was either Georgia or it was Auburn or it was Alabama, but it was mainly you were running into Georgia fans or you were running into Auburn fans. So it's a pretty big topic for the area that we do live in. Let's just jump right into it, man. What's your earliest memory as a Georgia Bulldogs fan? Like the first thing you can remember?
Yeah, so I think I have two that really stand out from when I was younger. Earliest memory of actually going to a game was the Georgia Tech game, and I think we went to that for my 10th birthday. I think we beat
Oh
Georgia Tech.
man,
It was like 51-7, so it was a good
just a
game.
slaughter.
Yeah, just an absolute blowout. So it was a good start to my Georgia fandom as a young kid. But then another one that's probably one of my favorite memories or favorite early memories is Lynn Smith, my mom. She
Shout out
took me
Lynn.
and Will and myself to the bowling alley in Noonan. I think they were playing Auburn that weekend, so they would always come into the bowling alley. They would bowl in Noonan. They would stop there. So we actually got to like bowl with the team. We got signatures from every player
That's
on
so
the team.
cool.
But like right before the team was getting on the bus, the only autograph or signature that I hadn't gotten at the time was the starting quarterback, David Green. So like me being like, I don't know how old I was, like 10 or 11, like I actually ran onto the team bus a little bit late to get him to sign it. So they're like, what are you doing? But I got the autograph, and we actually still have that football at home right now. I think it's in Philip and Lynn's closet, actually.
Dude, that's like just you running onto the bus is the funniest part of that.
Hey, you had to have the QB1 signature, so
Dude,
whatever it took to get it.
you gotta have it. And what's your favorite memory?
So obviously, with our newfound success here at
Oh,
Georgia, I have a few more recent favorite memories. So I think the first one for me is going to be the Rose Bowl, and really that entire season. It kind of
yeah.
came out of nowhere. That still, granted, we have two national championships since then, but that was still probably one of the most fun seasons I've had as a fan because you didn't expect to be there. Like you were
Mhm.
riding the wave the whole entire time. It's not like we were expecting to win anything big, but we just kept on winning and winning and winning. But
Mhm.
that kind of ties directly into my biggest heartbreak, which was losing to Alabama and
In
that season's national
2017.
championship on 2nd and 26. So I mean, that entire season, the Rose Bowl, definitely a favorite memory there. But then losing to Alabama, that was a tough way to go out. But I mean, another one obviously is us having our back-to-back championships that started
Yeah.
with revenge against Alabama and having, Keely Ringo's pick six. So, I mean, those 2 years were as good as you can ask for after a 40-year drought and being so close on, more than one occasion, like the Rose Bowl season or like, 2012 where we lost on a tip ball. So, I mean, there
Yeah.
were lots of chances for us to get over the mountain, and finally we did.
I was actually I think it was the season opener for that 2017 year. It was when y'all I think it was Appalachian State
It was. Jake Eason went
when
down, and then Rob
and
took over and didn't relinquish the starting role. So,
yep, and then whenever I was in the stands, they were like, "Oh no, Easton got hurt our whole season." I was like, "That boy Jake Fromm, he is a dog.
yeah,
He
Jake Fromm was
is."
different, but the only thing I'll say about Easton is I was disappointed to not be able to see his growth and
Yeah.
maturation over that freshman year going in the sophomore year because he had so much hype. He had the big arm, but
Yep.
I think he liked to party a little more than he liked to
Yeah.
watch film. So
Yeah, that was the word on the street. So we have been able to talk about the past now. Let's take a look at Georgia going into 2024. I I think Carson Beck's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think he's probably him and Quinn Ewers are probably 1, 2 in the SEC. You could put him either or. What are your expectations for Carson Beck going into 2024? for?
Yeah, so I really like Carson Beck. I think he's one of the best pure passers that we've had at Georgia.
Mhm.
I mean, you can make arguments for certain quarterbacks, but I think in terms of arm strength and just pure passer ability, how smooth he is, how effortlessly he pushes the ball down the field, and he really sees the field well, especially, with last year being his first year as rookie
Right.
starter. So I expect Carson to have another phenomenal year. He had the opportunity to gain that experience last season. He was able to develop chemistry with his teammates and with Bobo, the offensive coordinator.
Mhm.
We also brought in a few portal receivers that should help some depth on the outside. So you're going to have guys with speed. London Humphreys transferred in from Vanderbilt, and then Michael Jackson, who transferred in from Southern Cal. And then you're going to have a guy who's a bigger body on the outside who can go up and get it, and Colby Young. So,
Mhm.
Colby coming in from Miami. So I think if he performs at the level he did last year, and UGA performs the level we think they're at, then he's going to be a front runner for the Heisman, as well as a top 10 pick coming into the spring. But I definitely think he has the ability to improve on his numbers from last year and post another solid campaign heading into the draft in 2025.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see at the end of the season if we see him sitting up there at the Heisman ceremony. I mean, he's easily a top 3 quarterback contender for it. I mean, him, Quinn Ewers, probably Dylan Gabriel from out of Oregon. I mean, those are the guys that are going to be all up for your preseason Heisman picks. So it'll be really interesting to see what he can do with that offense going into his second year as a starting quarterback. Flipping from one side of the ball to the other, I mean, in 2021, Georgia's defense was relentless. It was easily the highlight of the team, and kind of the same way in 2022, but the offense started to catch up. 2023, the defense was still really good, but they did kind of take a step back from Georgia standards. In 2024, what do you expect from the defense? Can they reload and can they dominate like they did in 2021 and 2022?
Yeah, so I think they can, but it's going to be
Mhm.
tough, right? I mean, that defense, especially looking at 2021, I mean, that was probably a generational defense, one of the best
Yeah.
defenses you're ever going to see. I think everybody from that defense ended up getting drafted and playing on Sundays.
Mhm.
In order for them to have that level of production and dominancy, really, you're going to have some of these new guys performing at a high level and the ones that are returning to increase their production. So if you look at next year's schedule, certainly doesn't help me feel great about our
Yeah.
chances to reload a dominant defense. We just talked about Quinn Ewers and him being one of the top quarterbacks. You have Jackson Dart and Ole Miss. You have Clemson. So I mean, there's definitely teams on the schedule that might prevent us from statistically showing that domination that we did in the past.
Mhm.
But like I said, I mean, I don't know if you're ever going to see another defense like that at Georgia or in college football. So we'll have to see. SEC is a line of scrimmage league. And we didn't really have those game changers on the defensive line last year.
Mhm.
2021, we had Jordan Davis, you had Jalen Carter, you had Trayvon Walker, and those guys were, I mean, they were freaks. So you don't
Yeah.
really see all those guys, especially in one position group, on the same team at the same time. It was an impressive collection of talent.
Right, which is something that going into the season, that was something that Kirby Smart, we were in SEC media days when he was making the rounds before the preseason. You could kind of get the feel that he wasn't as confident with his defensive line, saying like, hey, like this is the one weakness that we could possibly have is our depth on the line of scrimmage. And
Yeah,
so
I think
I'll
last
be
year
curious.
we had depth, but it just
Yeah,
wasn't the depth that we've had in the past. There were no game
exactly.
changers along the defensive line. It was just like
Right.
more just a collection of I don't want to say average guys, but there was definitely no standouts. I mean, you have to
Right.
be dominant in the SEC, especially if you're going to stop the run. And I think that's where we really fell off last year was our
Mhm.
inability relative to Georgia's personal success with stopping the
Mhm.
run. We weren't there last year. And in order for us to grow as a defense this year, that's where we're going to have to make improvements. I think we kind of fell off at linebacker last year as well
Mhm.
as defensive line. So we do have some guys returning, some 5-star guys returning that hopefully will see more production. We were able to pick up, a guy from South Carolina that was pretty highly regarded coming out of high school. So we'll see how he does adjusting to Georgia's way of doing things. So
Mhm.
we'll have to see. I think the defense will be very good, but yet to be determined if they're going to be as good as they were in 2021 or 2022.
Right. And you just kind of talked about it with Georgia having the tougher schedule because for those that don't know, which you got to be living under a rock in the SEC nation to not know that the SEC is no longer having the East and no longer having the West. So I hate to say this, but I don't think Georgia's going to be able to hide in the East anymore, man. They're gonna have to start playing them. They're gonna have to start playing the West teams. Let's see. Y'all play Texas on the road. Y'all play Ole Miss on the road this year. Y'all still play Florida. Y'all still play Auburn. They start the season with Clemson. So, are you a fan of this new type of schedule that is taking place in the SEC? Does it have you worried that it'll have a few more losses on the schedule, or are you excited to see your boys to get to compete with the absolute best of the best in the country?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Like personally, I'm not a big fan of change, especially when it comes to college football. It's like what I think of as when I think of like the perfect sport, right? Like the
Right.
tradition and the teams that you're playing and the conferences. So college football, unfortunately, is trending in a direction that is indicative of the NFL, and I'm not a huge NFL fan. I don't necessarily think it'll impact Georgia significantly one way or the other. However, we have had the benefit of playing in the East while it was down. But you do have teams that are on the upswing, teams like
Yep.
Missouri, Tennessee with their offense, and even Kentucky. But Georgia, like you mentioned, we didn't get shorted this season on our opponents. So on the road against Ole Miss, Bama, Texas, opening with Clemson. So we're going to see what we're made out of. The only benefit to the new scheduling and playoff format is that if you do happen to drop one or two games against these high level teams, then you're still likely to be in that playoff with them, expanding to 12 or what sounds like maybe even 14 teams for this upcoming season.
That's just gross, isn't it? 14 teams. That's just gross. It's
Yeah,
absolutely gross.
not a fan of that. Maybe I think 8 would have been the perfect number for college
Yeah.
football, but
It's all about the money, which is that out of those games, let's say the Texas, the Bama, the Ole Miss game, the three big games on the road, which one would you like to go to the most?
Texas, 100%. I've always wanted to see Georgia play Texas. I
Yep.
know we got to play them a couple years ago in a bowl game. Didn't really hold the same standards though, with players opting out, not really taking it seriously. We were disappointed in how the season ended against Alabama that year, and we laid an egg. So I've always wanted to see Georgia play Texas. I've always wanted to go to a game at Texas. So if I can swing that, I would love to, go out there and take the family and friends and make
Yeah.
it a weekend.
That weekend in Austin is going to be absolute hell because it's the Georgia Texas game and Formula 1 will be in town too.
Yeah,
So like the
good
so
luck
like
getting
the
a
whole
hotel.
dude, so like the whole town's going to be shut down and then you'll have all the Georgia fans coming in. It'll be absolute chaos, but the, just from the game on the field, that could be like a playoff preview. That could be a SEC championship game preview. That could be a national championship game preview.
Yeah,
So,
could have that matchup 3 times.
yeah. So that could definitely be the game that I would want to see as well. Just a couple more questions for you. What position group do you really want to keep an eye on with spring football coming up?
Position group I'm most excited to see is our edge defenders. So we have some studs on that side of the ball that we recruited lately. We had a few recruiting misses or either developmental misses, for the past few years, it seems like. But most of the guys who I'm excited to see were freshmen last year. So, really excited to see what they can do coming off the edge. So Jalen Walker, Damon Wilson, Samuel Mapimba, Gabe Harris. And then you have Michael Williams. Now, Michael's a little bit older, but all those
Mhm.
guys are big. They're twitchy guys. They can get after the quarterback. So I'm excited to see what they can do with another year of development, strength and conditioning, under their belts and see, how we're able to affect the quarterback from the outside.
And and then that is able to kind of tie into the stuff we were talking about earlier, like how like last year Georgia kind of struggled on the front seven, like being able to stop the run, being able to get that pressure. So that's a good hit. And last question, a player you expect to pop on the offensive and defensive side of the ball this year. So like someone we probably haven't heard of, but someone that's new to the program possibly. Like who's going to be that new impact guy on either side of the ball?
Yeah, so I'll start on offense. So offensively, you could go a number of ways, but we do have a ton of production returning on that side of the ball. So I think you're going to see a really big year from Dylan Bell, number 86. So sometimes he'll line up in the backfield, he'll line up in the slot, he'll line up on the edge. He really can do it all. So, he can carry the ball out of the backfield, he can catch it out of the backfield, make plays in the middle of the field from the slot or the edge. He got great hands, he blocks well. So I think he's a guy who we're really going to depend on this year. It seemed like he developed a good connection with Carson.
Mhm.
And then if I had to go with a second guy on offense, I think it's going to be Dominic Lovett. So, most people know him. He had a kind of a quiet year last year for Georgia compared to his freshman year at Missouri. So I think he can be very productive, just like as evidenced by a standout season, freshman year at Missouri.
Mhm.
So Dylan Bell, 1A for me, Dom Lovett, 1B.
Mhm. I think I think Oscar Delp and Dylan Bell will kind of tag team to be able to make up what Brock Bowers is leaving behind.
I almost went with Oscar Delp, but he
Mhm.
brought in a transfer tight end from Stanford.
Right.
I'm interested to see like how Delp and his snaps get split. If one's more of a blocker, we're going to both use them more as pass catching tight end. So we'll see how that goes. We also have Lawson Lucky, you got Pierce
Yeah.
Spurling, so we have a ton of depth there in the tight end room. So that's kind of why I went with Dylan Bell. I think
Yeah.
he can
Yeah. Hey.
kind of do it all.
And and then who is someone on the defensive side that you think
So
could
this one was a little
really be
bit,
like breakout?
yeah, this one was a little bit easier for me. So
Mhm.
defensively, CJ Allen,
Mhm.
he's going to have a monster year. So he came in as a freshman last year, and he really took the spot from Dumas Johnson, who was an
Mhm.
All American. So if you guys don't know, once his spot got taken by CJ, he transferred over to Kentucky. I mean, he
I'm
lost his
so
job.
pissed he didn't come to Auburn. I'm so darn pissed he didn't
I mean,
come to
he did. I
Auburn.
mean, he did a good job. I mean, you don't just earn the title of All American for no
Right.
reason. He played the run well, was able to come downhill. But CJ Allen, I mean, he's different. He's going to be as close to Roquan as I think we've seen. He's a ball player, cerebral, tough guy. Having him and a healthy pop in the middle of the field, I think that's going to be huge and shoring up our run defense. And really leading the way for those guys on the back end.
That's a really big name to get compared to Roquan Smith, who's probably one of the best Georgia linebackers ever.
He's probably my number one.
I mean, just an absolute unit, man. Uh, Dude, do you have anything else to say about Georgia before we dip on out of here with this quick little podcast?
Anything else to say about Georgia? I think
Do you
Georgia
have
finds a way to win it all this year. I'll go on
Oh,
record.
you do. You do. 3 and 4 years would be a hell of a run for Kirby.
I think this team is much more prepared to do it than last year's team.
Yep, yep. I think with everything from the quarterback coming back to where you still have a ton of weapons, and I'm surprised we didn't talk about Trevor Etienne. I mean, he will be a stud. He'll be a stud running back. Georgia's defense is going to be just as good as ever. They're definitely going to be able to make a run. Brandon, I appreciate you stopping by the Extra Point to come to to talk about your Georgia Bulldogs, and we will talk to y'all on the next episode of the Extra Point. See y'all later. Peace, Brandon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Gus.